Hi, What the Health Tech listeners. I'm your host this week, Mike Taylor, Chief Technology Officer at Radar Healthcare. This is the podcast where we tackle some of the most trending topics, ideas, best practice in health and social care. This week, we're speaking to one of our great colleagues, Jonathan Alsop, Quality and Information Security Manager. Quick intro of what Jonathan does outside of work before we delve into the subject. And Jonathan is a keen rugby fan, supporting Bradford Bulls and Chef Wednesday. He's been to Disney more times than he can remember and has an 8-year-old Star Wars obsessed son called Caden. And is it Skywalker or Palpatine?
Definitely Palpatine, but I'm sure he'll hate me for not saying Vader, seeing that's his favourite.
Good lad. So Jonathan, welcome to What the Health Tech.
Thank you, Mike.
So today we're going to discuss the importance of security across healthcare. So where the main focuses should be, keeping secure day to day, and what is so important about it. So Jonathan, to start off, it would be great if you could give the listeners a brief overview of what's involved in your role as a quality and information security manager at Radar Healthcare.
Yeah, sure, Mike. So one of the main roles that I've got at Radar Healthcare is to implement a governance structure into the organisation. You know, it's one of the most overlooked things when you're considering information security. So what that will entail is going for ISO 27001 certification in particular. So that is making sure that we're implementing good governance policies, procedures, and looking at technical controls that we can bring in order to improve our security posture and obviously keep our most important asset safe, with that being data. On top of that, you know, next year we're going to be looking at cyber essentials, and obviously as we go further and further afield, you know, there are different certifications that we can go for that are applicable to other countries like NIST in America, for example.
Yeah.
And we're also looking at 9001, which is looking at quality and making sure that we can keep customer satisfaction high and provide quite a consistent service to our customers at Radar Healthcare.
Cool. So from your perspective, it's a wide subject, but what does information security mean in healthcare?
Yeah, it is probably one of the most important things in my view. I've worked in healthcare since 2009. You know, I've only had a 2 or 3 year break from that. Information security is one of those things that is expected. So when you go to a doctor's surgery, you know, you don't walk through that door and the first thing that hits your head, it isn't, is my data going to be kept secure? You know, what about my data? You know, a patient doesn't think about that. You know, they don't think about that when they're being wheeled into an operating theatre. So I feel it's an expectation that data should be kept secure, available, and accurate. For me, those are the 3 key things, you know, in a healthcare setting for what data should be. You know, it's quite, and again, I don't think people realise the value of the data that healthcare companies hold. You know, people don't realise, you know, the level and depth of information that people have. And it's just one of those things that just people just expect it to be kept safe. And I think that can be quite dangerous because that expectation, because people don't talk about it, I think security can be overlooked. And that's where the problems arise because, you know, all the bad guys out there, they want the high value data. They want the high value, and they will look at organizations that don't have the financial capability to put, you know, good security controls in place, you know, that have the ability to pay for that technology, you know. So that's why, you know, you see in the press quite a lot, you know, about no matter where you are in the world, you know, it's not just the NHS, you know, you see it quite a lot in America. You know, people go after those institutions because they think they are the easy targets and they get the most value from that.
Yeah, it's you know, if you look at some cases, it's got your data from when you were a child, everywhere you've lived, everything you've done healthcare related is you know, from a child right to an adult. So it's really high ticket data, if you like.
It's quite vast as well, depending on who you are. You know, some organisations can have that, but some organisations might not. But it's still health data.
Yeah. So how can healthcare providers ensure personal information is secure day to day?
I think it's just been a little bit smarter. You know, I've worked in previous jobs. I've worked with organisations that have the ability, you know, they can spend £2-3 million on security software and technology, you know, at the drop of a hat, and don't even think about it. But that's not what, you know, in healthcare, that ability, you know, is quite rarely there. So going back to the early point of why I got brought into Radar Healthcare, I think looking at those compliance systems and having that dedicated person that can go out and look for those systems that are suitable to that particular organisation. You know, you don't have to pay the world to have good security. You know, they always say that, you know, the biggest, I don't like terming the word weakness, but, you know, the biggest point there where problems can arise is from an individual, you know, a poorly trained or unscreened individual. So, you know, all the money in the world on technology isn't going to stop that from happening. So people just need to be a little bit more smarter and invest in people. You know, I think if you invest in people, that you will lower that risk from an information security perspective, and, you know, you might actually retain that member of staff as well if they feel valued in that role.
So I had one example similar to this was like a pen test security thing, and it was they walked up straight to reception and said, "Can I have I've got a meeting in the server room. Can you let me in?" And they walked up, let them in the server room. Fail, but that's the people.
Yeah, like I say, I've got similar examples where I worked in an organisation. I'm not quite sure whether they should have shown me the pictures, but they actually showed me the pictures of computers that a pen tester had actually taken out of the building and put it in the boot, and said, "Look, that's how easy it is," and it is easy, you know, for the guys that actually want to cause damage to organisations.
So from a Radar Health perspective, in terms of keeping our customers' data secure, what are our best practices?
Well, I personally, because ultimately we are a compliance-based software, you know, that looks at risk, looks at audit, looks at events, looks at incidents. You know, that for me is some of the key things from a compliance-based standard. So, you know, people might not know about 27001. They might not know it's an internationally recognised standard. They might not know that practically every organisation in the world has certification, you know, the big players, the Googles, the Microsofts, you know, but they already know about compliance. And I think that for me was the biggest win joining the organisation, because winning over people in relation to compliance is the biggest challenge. Because when I previously was an external auditor, you know, auditing organisations against 27001, you know, you used to go in and you used to talk to the compliance person, and they used to be stressed. You know, they used to just say, "I can't get this across to my senior leadership team. I can't get this across to the wider organisation." And that's because the mindset isn't there on compliance, how important compliance is. They just see it as, you know, a tick in the box exercise. You know, amount of times, if I had £1 for every time I heard that, I'd be a very rich person. Yeah. And they just see it as something extra to the day-to-day role. You know, they don't, you know, they're already crammed out 8 till 5, you know. Why do they need to care about this compliance thing? You know, they haven't got time to think about it. And that's where a good, well-implemented compliance structure does work, because it shouldn't mean that anyone has to expand out, you know, their 8 to 5 day. It should be just done as a given, if you see what I mean. And that in Radar Healthcare, I personally believe we're already there with that, because of the type of organisation that we are.
What do you think a customer of Radar Healthcare would think of information security, and what does that mean for them?
Well, personally, from a customer's perspective, you know, it's their data. You know, if something happened, you know, it's almost like giving a child to a stranger. You know, you expect that person to look after that child, and, you know, if that doesn't happen, you know, everyone is going to be, you know, pulled up for it. So from a data security perspective, they require us to keep data secure because, it's quite simply, if we don't, they're also going to be on the front pages of, the newspapers as well. It's not just going to be Radar Healthcare. So that they entrust us with that data to make sure that it is, to a previous point, that it is accurate and available and secure. So that's, there's a level of trust there. For us to do that, and I think that they are opening up more to, like I said, the compliance-based systems for what we are currently implementing within Radar Healthcare.
Okay. So we hear the term phishing a lot nowadays. So what does that mean, and what are the best practices a business can put in place, and how can we ensure employees know what to look out for, but also what to do?
Yeah, well, for me, so phishing is basically a bad guy that's external to the organisation. They could be trying to gain access to information. They could be trying to gain access to infrastructure, systems, software, you name it within that organisation.
But it's not just a person, isn't it? It's quite sophisticated bots.
Yeah, it can be bots, it can be person, because they will literally just, send it out to, it's like anything in it. If you send an email out to 1 million people, you only require a tiny percentage of that 1 million people, to get what you're after. And by
casting a net, hence the name.
It is casting a net, and unfortunately, information security breaches mainly do come from phishing attacks. And some of them are really, you can get the most sophisticated phishing attack in the world, but you can also get the ones where you look at them and you almost laugh. They're so poorly put together. So one of the things that you always used to get told from a phishing, you can tell, it's poorly written. It might not use an individual's name. It might not come from the individual's email address. The key things to look out for. I personally feel, yes, that is the case to some phishing attacks, but I've seen some really quite sophisticated attacks. One in particular, I did see an email that came into Radar Healthcare. Look, we spotted it. We spotted it straight away. Nothing happened, and you know what? It was really well crafted, and to me that was a really successful outcome because something bad could have happened from that. And just to pick up on your point on how to stop it, there are many systems out there that do simulated phishing attacks, and I think that they are excellent tools. If you get the right one, they are brilliant. And what I don't like terming the word paranoia, but it does. If you have an individual that clicks on a simulated phishing attack, it's not real. It's not going to cause any damage to the organisation, but I can bet you bottom dollar that individual, the next time that they receive an email that they might not, that might be quite unsure about, they ain't going to click anything within that email. They're going to report it. And that's what you should do, and that's what helps organisations stop those type of attacks. And there is the technology as well that can actually stop these emails from coming through. But we're getting into such a sophisticated stage. People are able to bypass that, so you can't depend on technology controls in place to stop those emails ending up with the end user. You have to. I personally think the number one thing is to concentrate on the awareness of the individual.
Yeah, I agree on that one. Do you think it has got more sophisticated? One from obviously, it's worth them doing. Obviously, to get hold of this data, they can really cause some damage. But do you also think because of the likes of social media and various different channels of communication, that they can find, they can target a CEO, they can find out his persona, how he writes, and then potentially mimic their language and.
But yeah, absolutely. A lot of people don't realise that you put pictures on LinkedIn, for example. Getting a fake mobile number and copying that picture across to WhatsApp, and then sending messages out to people within the organisation, from whose numbers will be publicly accessible on LinkedIn if you've set it that way. It's easy. I think in a way, yes, it is sophisticated, but it's also easy. And I think that's a big danger that, it's so, I think a lot of companies have to stand up to this because, sometimes it's a little bit difficult to hide. If you're a user putting data into a social media site, it can be quite difficult to know how you configure it to hide that data and have an understanding of how publicly accessible that data is. Is it your connections? Is it your friends? Is it everybody? I have connections on some sites, and you go on. I've never even spoke to them. I don't know who they are. They're quite high up in organisations, and all you have to do is scroll down, and straight away you've got a business email, a personal email, a phone number, a Twitter handle. You've got everything about them, and you've got that attack surface there through quite little investigation.
Yeah. When you couple that with these bots and everything that troll these social media platforms,
it's easy because you look for just key bits of information. Yeah. Look for key bits of information, and it does it for them. Set it going, and at the end of whatever you've got it done, you've got this trove of information.
So, as we've been talking about, with the best will in the world to keep things secure, sometimes breaches do happen. Can you tell our listeners how you would recognise security breaches and tips to tackling the breach?
Yeah, sometimes a breach it's quite difficult to actually see whether it is an incident or a breach. I like to concentrate on the weakness before the breach actually occurs. Think of it always think that the bad guy has got something. It might be a weakness, but always think that the bad guy has got something, because it's best to think worst case scenario. If you just concentrate on they might have, it might be a slow investigation, you might park it for a bit, you might find out that, in a month's time, oh God, we did actually have a security breach there. So I think the key for me is always think that a breach has happened, but also proactively manage those weaknesses within your organisation. Those things that the bad guys could get hold of to potentially cause that breach. I think I saw in a website I was reading the other day that a bad guy can sit inside your network. I think on average it's 200 odd days before they actually get found out. So actually realising that, thinking that a breach has taken place, it's better to think that something's happened and then investigate it and go, oh no, we're secure, than thinking, I don't think anyone's got in.
Yeah.
And I think that's quite key, and also isolating the issue as well, because sometimes it could be quite clear that a breach has taken place. So any kind of IT staff infrastructure, isolating them away from the normal, the actual BAU organisation, and protecting that, because there's criminal proceedings and things like that, and obviously you'd have the ICO that would come in and perform an investigation. So having that, in a safe environment for them to perform, what necessary investigation they need to do is quite key.
Okay, so we spoke about like breaches and issues and things that can go wrong. If we flip that on its head and look at things done really well, so if you've got an example of anything that's exceptionally well that people could take away and implement?
Well, some of the things that I like seeing people think outside the box. I've been to, I refer back to when I was an external auditor again, you go out and you see the real gold star organisations that have billions in the bank. They'll go in, oh, we fixed this problem. We spent £50 million on X, Y and Z. And brilliant, thanks. But not every organisation can do that. One organisation in particular, and I always used to refer back to this because it always, it made me smile. And you know what? As an auditor, it made me stop and read as well. And not often do you do that. And it was an organisation that actually ran a poster campaign for information security. So what he'd done is he'd publicised a competition, a £50 Smith Toys voucher for children to develop an information security poster. and I'm sure yourself and all our listeners can know that the most competitive people in the world are those who are parents. And, you know, every man and his dog wants their kid to win. And he ran this campaign, and he ended up getting, I think, 2 posters. He couldn't tell the difference between 2, which one would win. Ultimately, he gave one to the security unicorn. And, you know, I remember it being up on the wall, and I was walking, and it just completely caught my eye. I walked up to it and I read it, and there's not many times that I've actually done that whilst I've been out on an organisation, because, you know, poster campaigns and information security campaigns can be quite, you know, let's not beat around the bush, it can be a bit dry, a bit bland, a bit black. You know, I've seen people pay hundreds and thousands of pounds for poster campaigns. I've never read them. You know, they've not caught my eye. They have not made me stop and read what was there as much as what this did. It cost the organisation £50 in a Smith's Toys voucher. That's all that it cost them. But it made me stop and listen. And I looked and I thought, you know, if it's doing that to me, it must be doing that to other people. So they've served a purpose, and it's cost them £50. You know, that's nothing. You know, if that £50 helps somebody think about information security, if that helps that individual not do something that puts information at risk, I think we all should be spending that £50.
Definitely. So I feel like there's a bit of a common trend here. Is like, I think when people look at information security, they always think about the systems. I mean, me and you have spoken about that multiple times before, but it's the people, and then making those people aware. So if we are, for that example there, and just making people aware that these things happen, like the phishing and stuff like that, if people are just put in these situations, then they can, they're already aware, they're already looking for it and go, hang on, that doesn't seem quite right. I think that's
Yeah, I think one of the key things for me as well is making it, pitching it in a way that an individual can take it home and use it in the house. You know, I saw one client once, it was, and they pitched their campaign of information security starts at home. And, you know, they, you know, if they can get that good practice of someone, you know, keeping data secure in their own home, they're probably going to bring that into their working office environment, you know. And I quite like that as well. You know, there's quite a big pickup of that happening, you know, that people are concentrating quite heavily on people's personal lives and trying to work on that, because it's something that they will bring into the workplace. Yeah.
That's cool. We've got some really good tips there. So at the end of each episode, we ask everyone to describe what the health tech moment. So this is a question, it's a bit of fun, and we want to hear your weird and wonderful stories that you've experienced in a health and social care, or in this case security sector. If you can think of anything weird and wonderful, what's made an impact on you, a life-changing moment, for example, in this.
Well, it's not really applicable to health tech, but as we were discussing previously, you know, one of the strangest information security moments that probably happened to me was when I visited. I was at a client site and I visited the bathroom. You know, my girlfriend will constantly tell me that, you know, you never switch off. Well, clearly I don't, because at that particular time I did actually see a 360-degree CCTV camera directly above me that was recording my every movement. So I must admit that was one of the, and when people tell me that I don't switch off, I tell them that's the reason why, because, you know, information security can be all around us.
So filming you inside the client's toilet?
Yeah, it was covering everything within the bathroom area. So yes, I must admit the conversation that I had when I left said facility was quite strong.
There's definitely a joke in there about a zoom lens, but
no, please don't.
Right, so thanks for joining this week, and thanks for listening. Next week we're going to hear from Radar Healthcare's Mark Fuster, and Judy Walker from ITS Leadership, who will be discussing after-action reviews and how they contribute to patient safety. So don't forget, rate and subscribe wherever you hear these podcasts or view them. And if you have any questions for us, our guests, please do email on whatthehealthtech@radarhealthcare.com. Thank you.
Thank you.